The following program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.
Every day, citizens around the country are faced with new dilemmas. Dilemmas that affect them profoundly. Whether it's injustice, discrimination, falling through the cracks, scandals and cronyism, balances of power, ethics, religious freedoms, state versus citizens, and unfunded mandates, and the list goes on and on and on. Welcome to Speak Up. It's directed at those who have fallen through the cracks, and it gives them a voice. It's your turn to speak up. To stand up and fight back.
Welcome to Speak Up. I'm Kevin Avard, your host. And today we have a different type of case. We're going to be talking about family courts again, but with a little twist with the banking department. And today I have a guest, Janet Delfuoco, right?
Yes.
And welcome to the show, Janet.
Thank you for having me.
I know it takes a lot of courage to come on a show and talk about personal things such as what you're going through. But you have a unique case, and we're listening to a lot of abuses, or people alleging abuses by the courts, which it makes you shake your head at what is going on. Mm-hmm. First of all, you're a New Hampshire resident.
Yep, I'm 15 years.
Yeah, and you have 2 children?
Yes.
And you were divorced a few years back? Or?
A long time ago, actually. Yeah, we split up in 2006. The divorce was finalized in 2010.
Yeah, and tell me about the process when it first started going down. How did that transpire?
It was very civil. He moved out. He moved in with his girlfriend, literally from my house to his house. We got on great. We filed just separation, legal separation, final separation papers. We got along fantastic. It was the epitome of the best separation you could ask for. Mm-hmm. We got along. The kids were happy. Everybody was happy with what was transpiring within our family dynamics.
Okay. And when did things start going south, if you will?
Unfortunately, him and his girlfriend had also split up, and he then went homeless, and he was living in a camper in a campground. And I felt bad for him, but I sure wasn't letting him back into my house. It was now my house. I'd bought it from him. We were over. So he approached me about taking out an equity loan on my home so he could purchase a mobile home 3 blocks from me so he could be closer to the children. Again, we were getting along great. The family dynamics was excellent.
So you're saying, okay, yeah, I'll help you out. Obviously, when the kids visit you, they need a place to go visit, right?
Right, yeah. And I mean, I'm not about to, leave my ex-husband out on the street when I'm living in a beautiful house and
right.
I had money, and it was just the wrong thing to do. So I was trying to be the best person I could be, and I allowed for the equity loan to be taken out on my home.
All right, tell me a little bit of the history of that now. He comes to you, says, look, I'm going to be homeless. I need to take out a loan. Can you help me? And so he hands you a pile of documents.
No.
Or one piece of document.
Nope, he didn't hand me anything. I okayed it. He went to Granite State Credit Union in Concord. He filled out the first application. He filled out all the documentation. He called me one day and said, can you meet me at Granite State Credit Union? They gave me the equity loan on your house, but you need to sign off because they know it's your house, and you have to say that it's okay.
So you're going to let him borrow, basically, against your equity in your house?
Yes.
All right, which is in itself, there's a lot of trust right there.
I had no reason not to trust him, I thought. I mean, everything was okay. The reasons we got divorced were personal, mm-hmm. And I didn't want it to affect my family.
Okay. So you go to the bank,
mm-hmm.
and you sign a document there.
I walk into the bank. I had to leave very quickly because I was scheduled for another MRI. I was about ready to have another back surgery, so I stopped in on my way to my other MRI. I sat down, and the girl says, you don't need to be here for everything. This is his equity loan, but you have to sign this final page, which was the mortgage definition page, just saying that you're okaying the loan. I signed it, I got up, and I left. That was my biggest mistake.
All right, so right now, you want to advise everybody.
Don't ever do that.
Okay.
Never.
Because what goes on after that is a nightmare.
What goes on after that changed my whole entire life.
Okay. So what goes on after that?
What goes on after that? Well, apparently this was already pre-planned in my post-op divorce paperwork, which came out afterwards when all the research was done. He had written in here.
Describe what that is. What is a post-op?
You go in and you file separation, a legal separation, but ours was taken to the point where we got along so good that we wrote everything out, how it was going to be, took it to a lawyer, and they typed it up. Everything was completely mapped up. There was no
surprises.
No surprise. No going to court, no fighting, no attorneys, no nothing. No surprises. We agreed on everything. I'd already bought the house from him in 2007. I gave him cash money. My house, everything was taken care of. He had already been out of the house for years anyways.
Okay.
But he wrote in there, after the lawyer wrote up, any bills connected to the house, if the house is ever sold, I'm responsible for.
But did you see that in writing?
Yeah, and I just figured it was because of all my back surgeries that I was always having, that if there was any outstanding medical bills or things like that, or if, God forbid, something happened to me, that those bills would be paid on the sale of the house.
Okay.
Which was understandable. I was going through a lot of medical issues. I still am. So, I have my surgery in February. I'm in the hospital for a week, having rods put into my lower back. And things start going downhill a little bit between us. Not turning out to be such a nice person anymore. By April, he decides that he is going to try to take custody of both my children. I got into a fight with my oldest son, and I asked him to leave for a little while to go down the road to his father's house. I then called and told him to come home.
How old was he?
13. Asked him to come home. And my ex said, no, he's never coming back there again. I'm going to take away both the children from you. You're unfit. I was beside myself.
Based on what?
I was just unfit. There was no basis. I was unfit. I wasn't a safe parent.
Have you ever been convicted of a crime?
Oh, never.
Ever accused of crimes?
Never.
No record or anything like that? No domestic violence or anything like that?
I've been in nursing for 30 years. I went to school for nursing. I went to school for orthopedics. I have an orthopedic degree from NHTI. And right now, I currently work for different agencies in the state of New Hampshire working with the disabled.
So you would basically pass a background check?
I pass them every year.
Okay.
Very highly.
I have to ask this because it's important.
Yep.
Okay, so he accuses you. He says this is what his plan is.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to take your children instead of having equal parenting.
Yep.
He says no, we're not going to do that.
Right.
Why? What was his motive? Do you know his motive?
I did after a while. Yes. His motive in court when we went to court was because if he had both children, and even with one child, and he did write this down, from the minute I went to court with him trying to fight me for the children, and him already having the one child, refusing to give them back to me, he wanted child support stopped at all costs. No child support at all.
Does he work?
Oh, yes.
He's fully gained
He has
employed.
he has his own business, and he's fully gained employed. Yep, has been for 16 years with the same company.
Okay. Well, we'll leave them out of it because they didn't do anything.
Exactly. We shouldn't talk about them.
Right. So, all right, you're in the hospital. You get this news, or you're.
I'm post-op hospital. Yep.
And are both kids with him at this point, or
No,
just
only the one.
Okay.
The other one's refusing now because the youngest one is coming back saying to me, Daddy's telling me you're not fit, you're not safe. I can't understand why he's doing this to you. So unfortunately, the whole entire family started to divide up at that point, and that's when the battling began.
And keeping in mind, now you signed something which was very important, which was the equity into your home, and now the children are being used as leverage.
Right.
For whatever reason. Is he getting back on his bills, or he just doesn't want to pay child support?
He just doesn't want to pay child support. The problem there is if he didn't have to pay child support, then I was going to lose my home.
Because part of the child support
pays
goes,
my mortgage. Big part of the child
because you're a
support
single
goes to my
mom
mortgage.
paying. Okay. All right, let's move forward. Now you get this news. All right, you're going to file some papers. You're going to get an attorney or something to that effect.
I couldn't afford an attorney. I totally fought all of this all by myself. He had access to an attorney. He used an attorney, but the attorney never came to court for him. So
Who was the attorney?
I don't know. He never disclaimed that. The company he works for actually allows you to have attorney access as part of your benefits. And he also told me that one of his girlfriends at that time had access to a very powerful attorney that was obviously guiding him because he kept putting it down on his financial stuff. Well, my attorney, but he would never ever disclose who the attorney was.
Okay. All right, let's move forward with this then. Where does it go from this point?
So I'm in family court at this point. I'm fighting because he also had an agreement with me on this equity loan on my house that he was supposed to pay me a little extra more every month on top of the child support to have the equity loan on my house. He stops paying that. He has custody of one of my sons. I have custody of the other son. We're fighting. We're constantly in court about it. The final turnout is family court couldn't hear anything more about the house because it was post-op of the final separation degree, which also, let me point out, in the state of New Hampshire is very rare. I was even told that. State of New Hampshire doesn't usually actually even issue those. That was a very rare case that they issued that to.
Who was the judge?
Judge Weaver. He was the third judge. I actually had 3 of them.
Who was the first one?
I can't ever pronounce his name. Francesco, him. He was the first judge. He only sat on the case the first 3 times. He was very good, very nice judge, very good man. The second one was a magistrate. She was a female. She didn't do anything. She tried to get the house put in there for the hearing, but all the laws, nobody could come up with a law. The final and utmost judge was Judge Weaver. He was the one that did the most damage to the case and to the boys and to the whole family dynamic.
When you say damage, what do you mean?
In the very end of all of the fighting, a GAL was issued. My ex-husband refused to pay the GAL, and judge dropped the GAL issue.
Now, for those who are first time on the show, a GAL is a guardian ad litem that is appointed to basically represent the children.
Correct.
Right. And both parents are supposed to pay for the services of this guardian ad litem,
Correct.
which interviews you and interviews him and the children and surrounding
People that we made a list for. Correct.
Right. And so he refused to pay for the guardian ad litem, and the judge didn't get angry with him?
No, they just dropped the whole case and said okay. So I ended up bringing into court my 6 witnesses through the guardian ad litem, and all 6 of them stated the same thing. She's a great mother. I mean, she's a motocross mother. She spends all of her time with her children. She doesn't even go out. She does nothing. She's constantly with the children. He didn't have not one person to testify on his behalf. Judge Weaver then reversed everything that my friends had said and said that I was an angry person and I had anger issues and that I needed counseling. And on that basis,
Based on what evidence?
He didn't have any, except for what my ex-husband was telling him. He had no evidence.
Not a guardian ad litem, because there wasn't a guardian ad litem to use.
The guardian ad litem did say I was angry, but again, it was all based on what he was doing with the house.
Right.
During the whole process with the whole child custody issue.
Well, let me get back to the anger. Were you having violent outbursts and throwing things and breaking things?
Oh, no, I was just yelling at him all the time.
Right.
I was just, texting him or calling him and yelling at him because during, unfortunately, this whole process of having this house for 15 years and him stop paying me, the house started to go into foreclosure.
And you're working full-time, too?
I work part-time because I have degenerative disc disease.
Okay.
So I can't work a full 40 hours.
Right. And you have one child that's living with you now, and the other child's living
with his father.
And these 2 boys at one point were very close.
They were best friends.
And now they don't see each other?
At all.
They don't communicate to each other?
At all. Their father blocked all communication with blocks on all the phones.
And the judge is supporting this?
Yes.
Is there any type of visitation with you at all with your son?
Nope. The judge's quote, and I quote, Spencer Code can reach out to his mother. He may be able to talk to her and communicate with her, but I am not allowed to talk or communicate with him until I get counseling for my quote-unquote anger issues on how to deal with my son. One son. But I'm totally fit to have full custody of my other son. And that also same judge gave me parental custody and right, because I'm still losing my home, to now be able to take my son and I move him to North Carolina next summer.
You've had it?
I've had it. Had it with the state. Had it with this judicial system, and I've had it with the fact that my child lives 3 blocks from me and I can't see him.
Is there a restraining order on you?
No. There was at one point, yes, and then it was lifted.
And the judge still doesn't want, for some reason he thinks that you can't see your oldest son because you have anger issues that he must be a psychologist or something and know that you're...
Yeah, and the whole time I provided information with him that I'd been seeing my son all along behind his back.
And yet you're in the professional field where you're in the medical field?
Yeah, I work with disabled and handicapped children and adults, anywhere from the age of 2 up until 63.
Did the judge order you not to be able to work with these
Nope.
people? Or make any kind of recommendations to your employer?
Nope.
But your own child, you cannot
One of
see.
my employers is actually a PhD psychologist, and I worked for her for over a year, working with her 2 disabled children, and she came to court with me to testify on my behalf.
But the judge wouldn't admit that evidence?
He wouldn't listen to her.
Interesting. So they can make up their own rules in the courts?
Oh, he made up his own rules all the way, 100%. So now I'm out of family court. It's all said and done. There's nothing more I can do. So now I'm in civil court, and I'm trying to get the equity loan removed from the house. So when I sell the house, I'm not paying off the rest of his loan, so he can now have a free home. And that's in battle too, because Judge Anderson, for whatever reason, found him in contempt 3 different times, 3
Found
weeks
who in
ago.
contempt?
My ex-husband, James Goad, 3 different times for not following a court order, but yet said, I'm not going to do anything about it at this time.
He's not going to do anything about what?
He's not going to find him in contempt, and he's not going to make him pay me back the money. He's not going to make him take the equity loan off the house. I feel that they're just waiting for me to sell the house and just to go away. That's what they're hoping. I'm just going to go away. They're all going to buy their time. I'm going to end up paying off his house, losing a ton of money towards my own new house, and just buy time. It's going back to the exact same quote of 2010 on my final separation decree. Any bills attached to my house, I will have to be responsible for.
And he's not paying child support, obviously, for the younger one.
Yes, he is.
Oh, he is paying child
yeah,
support.
the judge did make him do that, yep.
All right.
But that was all part of the separation decree that he couldn't get out of.
Are you able to access how your oldest son is doing in school?
No, I can't have any contact with him at all. Only he can have contact with me, and he won't.
That's bizarre.
It is, because I proved to the judge, and the judge said flat out on the very last piece of paper that he handed me on the decision, it is very clear that Mr. Goad is manipulating the oldest son to hate his mother. And that is a quote on that decision.
Who said that?
Judge Weaver.
And yet he still finds it fit for him to alienate you from your
Yes,
child.
sir. Yes. Been a long road.
I just find it contemptible of our court system to be able to have such power over families and acknowledge the fact that the father is intentionally alienating this child from his mother. Acknowledging that in writing, correct?
Yep, in writing.
In writing, and yet he's still allowed to do this. The public needs to be aware of the corruption and disregard for civil rights of these children that are being alienated from both parents. It's not just the men, it's happening to the women as well. And it's happening everywhere. If you're within a block of somebody who's divorced, chances are they're being abused by our system. And our system is capable at containment. If you speak up, they'll punish you. And that's not judicial. That's not justice. It's tyranny. And it's happening with the very court system that is supposed to provide protection, that is supposed to adjudicate these cases in a fair and meaningful manner. So now you're going to be leaving the state because you've had it.
Well, I can't afford the house anymore. I only had 3 years left on it. This whole mess has cost me over $100,000.
And who did you have to pay, if you don't mind me asking?
What ended up happening now, so this is now from, we're not into divorce court anymore, now we're into the civil part of this. I ended up going to Granite State Credit Union and asking them for a copy of the original application to show to my civil court judge, because I was now suing my ex-husband to try to get the money back. Everything really unfolded then. That's when it all unfolded. He had apparently filled out the original application with his name and my address on it, saying that he owned my home
In order to get approved for the loan.
in order to get approved for a loan, or else he wouldn't have been approved.
Now, this is clear fraud
Yes.
and misrepresentation.
Yep.
And you brought this to the attention of who?
I brought this to the attention of the FBI, the federal prosecutor's office, to Granite State Credit Union, and to the Bankers Commission.
And how did they receive this information?
At the very beginning, the only reason I even knew about this was because I asked for also a copy of the defamation page that I signed. That they sent me on their own. What really set me off was the very first page that said, James S. Goad and Janet M. Delfuoco Goad of 259 Bow Street, Northwood, New Hampshire. I said, wait a second, that's wrong. What are you talking about, of? So I wrote to the Bankers Commission, and I says, I think there's something going on here. I don't understand what this of stuff. I says, he wasn't living here, this wasn't his house. The Bankers Commission investigated it, sent a letter to Granite State Credit Union. Their CFO sent back a letter stating, well, we only wrote that down, that was just a clerical error. That was nothing. Now, I hadn't seen the original application or all the paperwork yet. So I was just like...
That's right, you were in a hurry.
That's right.
You had to go get an MRI.
That's right.
And they said, well, you're not needed here, you just need to sign this particular portion.
Exactly.
So you're back with this loan officer back in Concord, and I guess her name is what?
Holly.
Holly. And you've discovered that, well, this is the same person that said you're not needed to be here anymore, said what? What happened?
I wish I was there. Well, unfortunately, what happened is when he filled out the first original application to get this, he wrote down his name with my address. He claimed he lived there.
Right.
He filled out a whole bunch of mistakes. He said he never filed bankruptcy. He said he didn't pay child support or alimony. It was all
Clear
lies.
fraud.
Clear fraud.
Misrepresentation
Clear fraud.
of where he lived, of his financial background.
Affidavit, everything, clear fraud. So I was able to get records of all of that. Then I got records of everything else that he had signed off. There was also 2 documents in there.
How hard was that for you to get those records?
I had to sue him for him, get subpoenas. I had to do this all on my own.
How much did that cost you?
Nothing, I did it on my own. I couldn't never afford an attorney, not after what this is costing me with the house.
So you're successful at getting these records subpoenaed, and you discovered there's all kinds of errors, this fraud, and now you're bringing it to whose attention?
Everybody's. I brought it to the federal prosecutor's office. Her name was Helen in Concord. She set me up with the FBI in Portsmouth. His name was Michael. He took down my complete report and everything, sent it back to Helen. I asked them what had happened. They said they weren't going to press charges against him because there wasn't a large enough money. So they sent it down to the state.
What was what money would they go after?
It cost me because of the house $100,000.
Right.
But
That's a lot of money to you.
To me, but the original loan amount that he took out was only $36,000, and that's all they can go after him for. See, there was another problem here. Okay, to back up 30 seconds, my house was going into foreclosure because of what he did.
Right.
No bank would touch this unless that equity loan was rolled into my mortgage. I said, no, why am I buying him a house? I paid him cash for this house. Why am I buying him a house, okay?
Right.
And I refused to. So that's why all the fighting was going on to get the equity loan removed. Granite State Credit Union knew that that was my house already originally because in April, I had gone to them to see about taking out a new mortgage. I only have 4 years left on my house. I was going to go 10 to make the mortgage payments a lot smaller because of all of my surgeries. My address, they knew it was my house. So that's what also baffled me was I'm like, okay, you have my truck payment with me, and I already tried to get an original mortgage at 2.75%, and you approved all of that, but yet he came in 6 months later telling you he lived there and it was his house, and telling you we were separated. I'm like, did you not think twice here? So at the end, when I was fighting with Granite State, and the whole reason I needed to know all of this information, my house was in foreclosure. Granite State said to me, well, you have 2 options. You let the house go into foreclosure and everything gets paid off, or else you can take out a home mortgage with us. And we'll keep the equity line still separate, that he can pay it, but you have to pay the mortgage.
Were they thinking they were doing you a favor?
Yes, they did. So I got my new mortgage papers. I was very unhappy about it. I all of a sudden went from 2.75% to 6.75% in less than 6 months. I now went from 10-year mortgage to 15-year mortgage. I went from a payment I could afford to a payment I can barely afford. I have to make choices every month when that mortgage payment gets paid of what I'm not going to pay for that other month. So that's why I have to sell the house now, and I have to move, because I'm done trying to afford something I can't afford.
Did you go to the commissioner of the banking and say, hey, look, there's some fraud that went on here?
I did.
And what did he do?
They felt that there was nothing wrong.
Was it he or she? Who was it?
I think it was a he. It was a he. And they said that the bank didn't do anything wrong, that they did everything right. And I said, well, even on the first complaint to you, you're claiming that, they claimed the whole Janet Delfuoco, James Goad thing was a clerical error. That wasn't a clerical error. He wrote my address on this form. There's nothing clerical about that.
Who enforces the fraud?
Apparently nobody in this state.
Did you go to the Attorney General's office?
Yes.
And what did the Attorney General's office say?
Let's see, 6 months later, it's still under investigation. I don't know what they're investigating. I think they're all just waiting for me to sell the house, take my loss, and move out of state and just stop being a thorn in their side. I'm leaving my family, I'm leaving my friends. My child's leaving all of his friends that he's known his whole life. We're just, I can't fight anymore with a state that's this corrupt.
You've gone to the Attorney General's office, 6 months, nothing. You've gone to the banking department.
Nothing.
Nothing. You've gone to the bank, and you're in civil court?
Yes, still.
And how are they treating this fraud?
They're not. They're not even investigating the fraud. As a matter of fact, they found him 3 weeks ago in contempt on 3 different accounts, and the judge said, oh, Mr. Goad, don't worry, I'm not going to do anything to you.
Do you have that in writing?
Yes.
Who said that?
Judge Anderson.
Why did he say that?
I have no idea.
What is the context of that?
I have no idea. I'd asked for Mr. Goad to be thrown in jail and for bank fraud charges to be placed. They won't do it.
So neither the federal, our Attorney General's office,
Nothing. They can even make him sell the mobile home. It's a mobile home. It's in a trailer park. I'm not minimizing somebody's place, but when you own a house like I own, that I built on 7 acres with a pond and memories, compared to a mobile home in a trailer park for 3 years.
the bottom line is there's forgery or there's fraud. Not,
Right.
not forgery, there's fraud.
Fraud.
Flat
Well,
out
there is
fraud.
forgery because 2 of my signatures are on pieces of paper that other people have examined and both said that those are not my signatures. And Mike Gill was one of them. As a matter of fact, if I may mention Mike Gill actually looked at all of this paperwork for me, and he has it all now under his legal advisors, and they're going to try to file a national complaint for me since the state won't do anything about it.
And Mike Gill is the mortgage specialist, so they're very familiar with how these things work out.
Exactly. He calls it a, there was a special name he used. A mortgage, starts with a P.
Predatory loan.
Predatory loan. He said that my loan is a predatory loan, and it's against the law, and somebody should have done something about it.
Are there any final thoughts? We've got about 50 seconds left.
My final thoughts is, as hard as this is going to be to say, because I believe every person in this world should get along for the sake of the children,
Right.
I take that back. Because in the state of New Hampshire, you're on your own. And probably across the country, I don't really know. But at this point, nobody's got your back anymore in this world.
Well, that's it for this particular show. Every week, I get approached. I'm not a judge. I'm just an average citizen. I am a senator, but I listen, and I hear these stories over and over and over again. There needs to be accountability of our court system to the people. There needs to be accountability of our Attorney General, at least some modest accountability. All the bureaucracies need to be held accountable on some level. And it's up to you, the people, to start speaking up massively. Until next week, thanks for watching Speak Up. Thank you for watching Speak Up. And we want to thank our sponsor, Avard Cleaning. If you have a carpet job, call Avard. They're the best in town. And if you have a story and you want to be heard, contact me, Kevin Avard, at speakupnh@gmail.com. That's speakupnh@gmail.com. We'll get your voice heard. Thanks for watching. Until next week.
The preceding program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.